You're listening to We're All Gonna Die Anyway with Jess Wiener. Don't worry. This is a joyful podcast about life, death, and everything in between. I talk a lot about connections on the show, the connections that I make with our guests and the people in my lives in general. I'm a very relational person. Connecting, relating, communicating is kind of like my lifeline in the world. And our next guest is somebody that I can't even remember when we connected for the first time. She just sort of folded into my life pretty magically. And I know it was a couple years ago. I had heard about her a lot. I had read her work. She's one of the smartest writers I've ever met. Her work for me before I knew her was like a big wake-up call, like smacked my psyche. It made me laugh. It made me think. It made me really want to be better at doing what I do. She just has that kind of effect on people. So I'm excited for you to meet our guest today because I think the conversation that we're having is really going to resonate with a lot of you listening, especially in a time right now. My guest today is Jenn Romolini, and you probably have read her work as well. She's an editor, a speaker, a digital strategist, and her work's been everywhere from the New York Times to Elle to Vogue, Fast Company. She's been at the helm of a lot of great digital platforms. She was the editor-in-chief at Hello Giggles. She was the editor-in-chief at Yahoo Shine, and she was the deputy editor at Lucky Magazine. So Jenn comes from this incredible background of editorial writing, but what I love about her the most is she took a lot of her life experiences and a lot of what she learned in crazy, wacky jobs that she had and her own insights in being her own, a boss and a manager. And she wrote a book called Weird in a World That's Not. And it's a career guide for misfits and fuck-ups. And it's incredible. It's one of those books you're going to zoom through, but it's also one of those books you're going to want to give to people in your life who are looking at how they fit into the work world. And maybe they felt like they haven't fit into the work world before because of X, Y, or Z. And Jenn really kind of puts a fine point on how to really own exactly who you are in any space that you're in, but especially in your workspace. Her next book's going to be on ambition, which I can't wait to talk about because she and I talk a lot about the hustle and ambition and the rise and grind culture and kind of what a facade it is really for a lot of us. But anyway, for this conversation today on the podcast, I knew a little bit about Jenn's background. I knew that she was raised by teenage parents. I knew that she and I have talked a lot about the concept of reparenting, remothering. So for those people who didn't get the kind of nurturing and connection that they were looking for as a child, or even didn't know they needed as a child, maybe you had a rough childhood. I mean, a lot of people's parents are not great. And so we talk a lot about what it takes as an adult to overcome those obstacles from childhood and from our youth and learn how to reparent, to re-nurture ourselves. That's important for me because it is a part of what it means to live the good life. I mean, that's what we talk about on the show. We talk about life and death and loss and urgent living, and we talk about how do you make a life that you really love on your own terms. And in order to do that, a lot of people have to face the past that they come from in order to know the direction that they want to head in their life. So Jenn offers a lot of very no bullshit advice. She's probably the most no bullshit person I know. And what that gives us in this conversation is a sense of connection and trust. She's a willing partner for me in going there, so we were able to go deep, and that's what I really enjoyed the most about this conversation. She's smart, she's going to inspire you to think, and she's going to remind you it's all going to be okay. We're going to figure it out. It may not look pretty, it's likely going to be messy, and that is the whole road to living a good life. So I can't wait for you to hear this conversation with Jenn Romolini. Let's dig in. Hi. First of all, we haven't seen each other in so long, but we're now formally going to sit down and have a conversation.
We're going to catch up on all of our things.
In front of everybody, which is great for those with social anxiety.
Which is exactly as it should be. Don't feel awkward at all right now. Everything's fine.
But you wrote a book called Weird in a World That's Not.
I did. And now I think after writing that book and getting feedback from people, I think everybody's actually weird.
Yes.
Like it's the world that is not weird enough. That's it.
But this is what I want people to know about you. I love you so much because when I see you, even as little as we do see each other, it's like we just go immediately deep because there's just no bullshit there.
That's right. Well, who has time?
Nobody.
Who has time? And the bullshit is so confusing. Being a bullshit person and like talking on that frequency that I can't even, I just leave feeling like, what happened?
Like a drive-by, like literally.
Did either of us enjoy that? What was that? I mean, maybe small talk brings people comfort, but it does not.
No, it doesn't for me either. It makes me really anxious.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So when I was thinking about our combo, which I can't wait to see all the windy ways that it goes, I was thinking about the way we met was through a mutual friend, Whitney, because you guys grew up together in Pennsylvania, right? Is that how you know each other?
We went to college together. Okay. We went to college together, Whitney and I. That was the college that I totally like stoned out of, but she was there and we were friends. Like we had friends in common. So we knew each other from that, and we've kind of kept in touch, but haven't seen each other in 20 years.
A lot.
But no, we were in each other's orbit for a long time, and then we met when I was at Shondaland officially, I think.
But where did you grow up? I don't think I know that.
I grew up in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Kid of teenage parents.
Wow. How
16
old were they?
and 17.
No way.
Still together.
Really?
Which, you know, good for them, I guess. You know.
Is it?
I don't know. I mean, you know, marriage is a hideous slog. So, I mean, who knows what? And nobody really knows what's inside a marriage or why we stay together. Or, you know, I think that they find comfort in each other. And I do think you get to a point where the shared history and the comfort of this shared history outweighs a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And I see that now in my own marriage, even, you know, as you're processing things.
So are you the oldest?
I am the oldest. Yeah.
How many?
Yeah. Oldest of 3. My sister is 5 years younger than I am, and my brother's 11 years younger than I am.
I knew I liked you. I'm an older sister too.
Yes. It's a big thing.
It is a big thing.
It is a big thing. But because my parents were so, I'll say, frankly, age inappropriate to have a child, my sister and brother had very different childhoods than I did.
Bet. How? Yeah, because they were 5 years later.
So my mom was 22. That's still really young. But then by the time she had my brother, she's 28. So that starts to become more of a grown up.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not even so much birthing a child, I think, as a teenager. It's living through your 20s, young 20s, all those years where you have no idea who you are, your brain's not even fully developed,
right? And
raising a child,
right?
And you know, I am just starting to come to terms with everything that has meant to my life, because the foundational security of a little kid, I didn't have it because they didn't know how to give that. Of course not.
Right? How would they?
So, and that is so important. And I have a daughter, and I think about it all the time. Like, I can't even imagine her being in like these party houses and just waking up and there being anybody in the house because we were the only people at a house because all their friends were in high school. Wow. So like high school parties, but with a kid.
Like, when did you become aware of that? Like, how old were you, do you think, when you became aware that your parents maybe weren't like other friends' parents? Or did you feel that way?
I knew, well, they were really beautiful and really cool, right? So everybody, so it was always also a little bit of a, we can curse, it's always a little bit of a mind fuck for me because it was like everybody worshipped my parents because their parents were all like old and boring. And I had these young hip parents, beautiful, cool parents, right? And so it was very confusing to me because I was always like, this is not good.
Right.
Like,
but everybody thinks it's good or behaves like it's good. And it really does fuck you up.
It fucked me up. Yeah. And then also I learned not to trust myself. And I actually learned qualities that were really important for my business success, but really bad for my well-being, because I learned to track adults.
Traumatized kids do. Right. That's what we do. Yep.
So you can track a room, which means as a professional person, you can read a room.
Yes.
And you're speaking to everyone and you're pleasing everyone and you're making everybody like you.
Everybody's needs.
Everybody's needs. Yep. You're anticipating what they're not going to like.
Yep.
And so that was like amazing. When I finally got into a career, I shot up so fast, and it was because of that quality.
Yep.
And, and having this really fucked up background. Also because, there were lots of drugs. It wasn't just that they were like, it wasn't like they were like, oh, we're just teenagers and we're going to go to church every Sunday. It was like, there were tons of drugs and, affairs and just instability everywhere. Yeah. Like just, not even understanding like what movies I should see as a 5-year-old, So I remember seeing like lots of Brooke Shields
at 5.
At 5, you remember that was not good.
No.
The Blue Lagoon, Endless Love, lots of naked butts.
But that just accelerates the maturity so much in a kid.
That's right.
Do you know anything about your birth story at all, even though they were that young? Like, do you know what your birth was like?
It was horrifying.
Really?
Nobody had any respect for my mother.
Really?
She wanted to have a natural birth. She was 16. They wouldn't let her. They like wheeled her away somewhere. They gave her Pitocin. I mean, a 16-year-old baby, she could have pumped out a baby like, in whatever. And she had no complications. And then they discouraged her from breastfeeding.
Wow.
And
so she's totally removed from that process of actually giving birth.
Exactly. So it was a really traumatizing experience for her. And
was your dad there?
My dad was there, I think. We lived with my grandmother who was bipolar for a long time, who was like bipolar, like institutionalized bipolar, like would have to be taken out in straitjackets. So that was also
Whose mom was that?
My mom's mom.
Wow.
So that was like also there. So it was just like, now that I'm like old, I can see these like generations of trauma. And also like I was 3rd generation immigrant Italian. So it's like,
You're
they had all
so
this.
much.
Yeah, you're carrying so much. And because our generations were so short,
Yep.
I knew my great-grandparents. I knew, so.
Yeah.
But her birth story was bad.
Wow.
And then they became like vegan at some point, like really
way back in the day.
Way back. But like, I don't know. Maybe that's why all my teeth are fucked up because it's like there was no like supplementing. So like our whole fridge was like beer and oranges. And it was really like weird.
I'm just now imagining you as a little baby with a beer in your hand.
Yes. I mean, not quite, but close.
If you could think about like top of your head 3 words that described your childhood, what would come to mind?
Chaos, fun, and young.
What about the fun part? What was fun for it?
Well, I mean, look, there's no one more fun than teenagers when you're a kid.
Right.
Like they would do anything.
Right.
Like also stoned teenagers.
And no rules.
Like, no rules. Like stoned teenagers. I just remember dress up show, like my dress up play with my mom's girlfriends, you know? And it was like, that was fun. And also the other thing is, I'm fairly independent because of this, because of all this trauma. Like, and because of that sort of free-spiritedness, like I'm independent. I'm, as much as I'm anxious, I'm also a little bit fearless, you know, like I'm like, okay, well that, that'll probably work out.
Right. Well, you've lived through things.
I've lived through things. I lived through things young.
So when you look at this now, I mean, now you're raising a daughter. How old is she?
She's 9.
She's 9.
She's 9.
So, and now that you're raising a human,
right.
But when you look back, I think, when you look back now on your childhood, and you talked about how the experience actually programs you pretty well to meet the needs of adults later on in life, which I definitely want to talk about, because I think I think for me, the stuff I'm learning about my traumatized childhood and the way that I've adapted,
right?
The adult adapted child is what they call it in that right. work, right? Like happens very, very young. But if you were to look back now with all the work that you've done on yourself and all the continual work that you're doing, what would be a takeaway now that you look at your childhood and think about that maybe you didn't see in that way before?
I think that I think that I know that I was a very strong, I didn't realize how strong I was. I was a very strong kid. I think that a lot of the things that I experienced and witnessed, had I not been strong, I would have been much more of a mess as an adult.
You mean strong of spirit?
I was strong of spirit. Yeah. I was strong of will. I was strong of spirit. Mm-hmm. Even though I was tracking, I was also playing, like not playing. I was playing for my own interests, and I had that strength of spirit very much. And I don't know if that's from being an Italian American or what, but like I was, even as a child, a good flagger of bullshit.
Really?
And I continue to be that. Like,
Yeah.
this doesn't sound right to me. I had a very good intuitive sense. And I think that being a kid in that kind of chaos helped me develop that even more.
Yeah, I can see that. You know, it's so interesting. For the successful people that I've met and known in my life, we are all somewhat programmed very similarly, you know? And I'm curious, I mean, so when you talk about how the upbringing sort of benefited the trajectory of your relationships in work, let's talk about that a little bit, because that's part of what your transparency has helped people to open up and talk about. I mean, you had public success in your field fairly young-ish, do you think?
No, I don't think so. No, I think I actually was a late bloomer.
Okay.
Fairly fast.
Fairly fast. Okay, fair enough.
So I did it fast. I think one thing, look, I think I'm super grateful for the trauma, the abuse, all of it, because I am a really empathetic person. And I can help people feel okay about themselves because I really understand how they don't.
Yeah.
And that is a massive benefit. And I think that the other thing is I was raised with a lot of love. Mm-hmm. And I think about that too. You know, we're all set up with these, you know, we're handed this, like, just this kind of big pile of mess, right? Mm-hmm. All of us are. And some of the mess is good. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my parents really loved me fiercely, and they still do, you know, even though it's problematic and whatever, that love, I've seen other families where there's not that.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a big deal. Affection, love. I did know I was loved, even if things were fucked up.
I feel the same way. I think that's maybe what I would look at with my childhood now, and some of the work that I've been doing is that I think partially when you go to unpack your family system, if this is the kind of self-work that people do, right? If you choose to do that, you have to go back and look at how you were set up as a kid to feel safe. How are we attaching? How are we learning attachment, right? And when I started to learn about attachment theories, it blew my mind, because I always thought too, because I got rewarded for being a people pleaser, for being a perfectionist, for being pretty type A, and very anticipating everybody's needs. That was a benefit and is a benefit for girls in this culture. But then when I started to feel so miserable about being that kind of person, and you start to unpack it, I think for me, I don't know for you, when you unpack your family system, there's a lot of guilt. There was a lot of guilt for me in, like, I'm going to say things and experience things about my family that I feel bad thinking, or I feel bad discovering. And then I think, and I'm doing this work for so long, I'm in a space where I can find the gratitude more, and I can recognize the moments of love. And I think everybody's parent, I mean, I would say by and large, not everybody, but most of the most fucked up stories I've heard, or those experiences, were well-intended parents. Or doing the best they could with what they had. Like, if they're not doing their work, how do we expect them to be doing it differently?
I have a mantra that I worked on for a long time. You know, I love you for all of you that you are and all that you couldn't be. And I think that I think there are things, I think that we get into weird spaces when we're talking about intentions and all of that, because it just, who knows what our intentions are. I mean, I think I was a spirited, emotional, difficult child. And I think it was really difficult for my mother to raise me. I think we were incompatible in a lot of ways. I watched her raise 2 kids after me, and I think it was much easier for her, right? And I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment. I don't think it was fair to me.
Right.
You know? But I think that I can come to peace with that reality. It doesn't mean did she do the best she could? I don't know. Those words like best and intention and all of that, I don't know. Yeah, she could have fucking done better. Right. You know what I mean? Sure. I don't want to think about it in those terms, because then also it makes me feel like I don't want to forgive her for a lot of things. Because there's also the forgiveness trap, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's some things that I'm like, no, that was so fucked up that I'm not forgiving you for that.
Right.
And you haven't taken maybe enough accountability for it. And maybe you can't take accountability.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So coming to peace on my terms without thinking about what her process was or anything, and just being like,
this is how it impacted me.
This is how it impacted me.
I get that.
You know, because one thing I've always done is made myself small so that other people could feel okay. And I think that in processing my childhood, I'm fatigued by that narrative that they did the best they could. Because it's also been a thing that I've been hearing my whole life, because everybody knows I had the teenage parents. I had the weird teenage parents. Well, they did the best they could. It wasn't as crazy as you remember. And then it's like I'm gaslit.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
I hear that, yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I think for me, I totally hear that. I think for me, I'm now reflecting on like, why do I use those terms for me? I think it's because I'm thinking about how I don't want to have a child in the world. And I'm thinking about, I'm not so sure sometimes that my mom really did, but she had one. Yes. And so I think for me, sometimes I'm trying to imagine and empathize with what would have happened if I lived at a culture and at a time and a circumstance where having a child was what you just did. You didn't question it. And even if maybe you thought you wanted it, it just was also because you never had a chance to think about it otherwise.
Right.
And how I see sometimes a very unexamined life by my mom, and it's heartbreaking for me.
Yes.
And I feel though what I've done though is take the burden on to then go and explore for her.
Right. Right. And that's the thing. Like, taking on the burden for them. These were choices regardless of the place and the this and the that.
Yes.
Because, I feel like my mother has all this tremendous potential, and I have the guilt and the burden that I blew it for her. And I really had that for a long time. I remember we were at like a dinner sometime, and it dawned on me, and we're sitting at this big dinner in a restaurant with people, and I'm sitting next to her, and I'm like, I looked at her and I said, do you feel bad that you had me?
How old were you?
13.
Wow.
I said, do you feel bad that you had me? Because I would feel bad if I were you.
What did she say?
Oh, no. Of course not.
She could let that
in. Of course.
Right.
But we haven't, she and I, and we probably never will, really unpack the impact of what that did to her life. And she's incredibly intelligent and intuitive, and she had to drop out of high school because she was in a Catholic high school, and she could be pregnant but not married, and she wanted to marry my father. And so
wow.
And as I became more successful, she could not hide how jealous she was. And so then I had to have that burden too, because she resented me. And that was when the resentment jumped out, right? And so I'm sick of the burden of her story, to be honest.
Yeah,
and I feel a lot of guilt even saying that out loud.
Yeah, I get it.
But I can't exist as my fullest self.
Correct.
Carrying that thing that I had no choice in.
That's right.
I mean, Roe v. Wade came out it was perhaps a month before I was born. And it's been a thing that she said to me, I could have had an abortion. And I'm like, can't do it.
Can't think about it now.
Sorry.
Yeah. But see, this is some deep fucking mother wounding stuff that I don't feel like we have the proper place in this culture to talk about.
Yep.
I think this is honestly for me one of the last third rail taboos in women's experiences. That and choosing to not have children is a whole other place but it is, I'm just getting into a work of a woman named Bethany Webster who writes about the mother wound, and at first I was really resistant to that because much like you, I was kind of like, I don't want to consider one more thing about what her experience was, but it wasn't about that. It was about all of the internalization that those with complicated relationships with their mother, of which I don't know many who don't have them, but we don't talk about it in that way. And what I realized in what you just said is that one of the things that I've adapted to as an adult adapted child, being super codependent with how people feel about me and needing that as an attachment part, was that my needs and what I wanted were absolutely bottom of the rung. And so I really feel you in my core when you say I cannot live my full life carrying any part of her story. And I long for, because we live and work in Hollywood and all these stories, I'm longing for more stories, not terms of endearment stories. I see those are fairly Hollywoodized versions of complicated mother-daughter relationships. This for me is nuanced and complex. And so many women are struggling with it and we don't talk about it.
Right. Oh, I know. And then see, so much of this stuff started coming up for me when I did have a daughter, right?
Yeah,
And which, by the way, I know that the no kid thing is a big thing. The one kid thing, also a big
Really?
thing. The fact that so many people, you're gonna have another kid, you're gonna have another kid, you're not having a kid. Oh, shame, you can't have just one, whatever. So they just never
like a
stop.
potato chip.
Nobody's
You can't just have
no,
one.
exactly. They're never happy with what you do. So, but I think a big part of this stuff is, I think for our mother's generation, accountability has been really hard. And I think the accountability would burst something open in them that's too much. It's too painful. Because my daughter's 9, she's almost 10. I already can see the ways I fucked up. I can already see it, right? I'm already in this. I could see I got a decade in. I'm like, fuck that one up. Like, really? But I take accountability with her all the time, all the time. I'm so sorry. You were right. I never gaslight her, and I can feel the instinct too.
Really?
I can feel it. And to say, yeah, but you were yelling,
Right, like to put that on her.
Yeah, to put it on her. I can feel it. But I take full accountability, and I'm very honest with her about my imperfections. And I wonder if for me,
such a gift, Jen.
that would have been
Honestly,
enough.
Yeah. I'm literally sitting here thinking, I don't know what it would have been like to hear my mother speak candidly about her shortcomings and what permission that would give for me to feel connected to mine. Honestly.
Yeah, and also connected to your different feelings about her, so
Right.
that you could dislike her.
Correct. Without feeling like you're betraying her.
you're losing her.
Right.
And I make it very clear to her, I get it. You're not going to like me today. I have to make you do this homework.
Right.
It's a bummer.
Right. Yeah.
But that's my job.
Right.
My job is to make you safe in the world and to set you up for success. And we can talk about this. This is a collaborative experience.
Right.
Just
by the nature of changing that, I think you've changed the course, no matter what you're fucking up.
She is so willful, like I was, but nobody's breaking it. Nobody's breaking it in her. And I have no interest to break it. And I'm like, no, you're right. You're right. And that is a ding on my ego almost every day of my life. Because she has a rap sheet on me.
Right.
And she
Right.
brings it up. And I'm like, I've apologized. If you need more apologies, here they are.
It's crazy. What do you see the most in her that reminds you of you?
Oh, she's relentlessly, she won't let an argument go. She's just relentless. You can't beat her. I'll say to my husband, I'll watch him get into it with her. And I'm like, why? She's going to win. Whether it's she wants a pet, she will write a 5-page.
I saw that. You acquiesced to that.
I did not.
No?
I did not. Well, the good thing about kids is they forget.
Okay.
So I didn't actually, she wanted a lizard.
She
and
wanted
she
a
wrote
lizard.
a very
But
long.
Didn't you get a dog that you didn't
Yeah,
want
I
at
did.
some
I
point?
did get a dog that I didn't want. And today she was arguing for a rabbit. And my husband said, all of this information would be great for people who didn't already have too many pets. For people who were in the market for another pet.
Right, but we're not
we
those
have
people.
3.
Right, you have a cat, a dog.
2 cats and a
you
dog.
have 2 cats and a dog.
We have 3 mammals.
Oh my God.
But yeah, she's an incredibly good litigator, but she's very much herself. She's able to express all kinds of things, and we let her be right. And I don't think we let kids be right enough. If she's got the best idea in the house, she's got the best idea in the house. It doesn't matter that it came from a 9-year-old.
Right.
I mean, this is my management philosophy and my parenting philosophy. It's okay.
Yeah.
There's a chain of command,
Yeah.
but everybody's ideas are welcome.
What's her relationship like with her dad?
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, and I can equally see in the name of intimacy bringing my issues with her father, allowing them to seep into, and I don't have men. I mean, I'm in a happy marriage, but you're in a marriage and the person didn't clean the kitty litter and whatever.
Right.
I see how we also poison our kids against partners. And it happens both ways. It happens the dads do it with the moms. Oh, well, mommy, she's really, she's so strict. And it's a really weird thing that I see it happens to parents, and I never do it. I keep totally away from it. I don't agree with her negative assessments of him. We are really unified in that the most important thing is that she has really positive relationships with both of us.
Independently.
Yeah. And we spend a lot of independent time with her, building up those relationships. And she has very different relationships with each of us. And I think that's good.
What do you say when people question whether you're going to have more children? If you choose to answer those questions.
I mean, I'm such a people pleaser that I'm like, oh, not in the cards for me.
Right.
I'm like an asshole. Like I'm here talking about personal power, but in this situation,
you're like, well, yeah, probably not.
Oh, that ship is sailed.
Right.
At this point, the ship is so fucking sailed.
Oh my God. Let's talk about our sailing ships. Because both, you were around the same age. So I'm 46, we'll be 47 this year.
Same. I'm going to be 47 next month. Yes.
What the fuck is going on in our bodies?
Okay. First off, I'm mad at two things. Mad that nobody talked to me about this.
Yes.
This fucking train wreck.
Yes.
I'm mad that, I'm also a little mad at myself that I somehow didn't think it was going to happen to me.
Same. And it feels like it came out of the blue.
It did. I said to you before this, and it's totally the truth. My body is glitching.
Yeah.
Anything could happen any day.
Yep.
I could be, and then
Do you have hot flashes? Or feelings of hot flashes?
I have sensations of immense heat.
Yes.
Which I don't know what that is, but I will tell you, I have been, obviously there's so many ways to treat this, and I'm sort of really in the beginning of this, but the glitching is crazy. The mood swings are insane. My rage is so profound some days. Like I literally will walk in the house and just look at the pets and be like, I hate you. Like I just hate everything about this house, including you, dog. It's so horrible. I don't abuse the dog. I then pet the dog, and then I feel guilty for hating the dog because then I cry. So things are going great.
So things feel awesome.
But I stopped doing sugar.
Yeah. It has a huge impact.
And I have older friends who are like, look, basically how you're going to get through this is by being very boring. It's a bunch of really boring lifestyle changes.
A lot of clean eating, no sugar.
Alcohol. Yeah. I have a drink and my neck sweats while I sleep. It's just, what is happening? Why do we have to do this?
I don't know. And I think for me too, we are so socially conditioned to doubt our bodies all the time and to have such an overreactive response to perimenopause, menopause, periods. I think anything just that deals with our hormonal functioning. Yeah. There's so many things. And then what I found really interesting was when I first started to feel okay. And the other thing too is when you don't choose to have a child, when my body has not given birth to a child, there are different things that happen to your body.
Oh,
because, and so as I started to research this, I wouldn't find articles or information about those who haven't had children. They always say post-childbirth, perimenopause, whatever.
Right.
And so then when I would find them, they would always be a whole bunch of bioidentical hormones and supplements and this and that. And I just wanted somebody to explain to me what's actually happening.
Right.
And I have fibroids now and
me too.
That I never had before.
Too. I was like, what is that?
Seriously. And here's what I did though. This is how fucked up my mind goes. I'm like, oh my God, is my body punishing me because I didn't fill my womb with a baby? So now it's filling itself with fibroids. Literally it makes me doubt everything that's going on in my body.
Don't do mean things to yourself.
But it's it is. I do what I think out of that. There's so much wrapped up shame and guilt and fear and also a little bit of reckoning. I'm really at this point.
I'm old.
I'm at this midpoint.
I
hope midpoint. I don't know how long we're going to live.
Well, no, also my fear of dying. I will say that the one nice thing about this sort of perimenopausal state is I can put all of my hypochondria into it. I'm like, oh, well, that must be it. Because usually I walk around just thinking I'm going to die at all. And the reason I think that is because I like being alive so much. I'm like, just please give me to a healthy 90. Yeah. That's what I really want. Just a healthy, coherent.
Think about that. If that is the case for us, that means let's assume that we're going to have a healthy 90, even though the title of this podcast is We're All Going to Die Anyway. So we know that's our eventual end.
Right.
That leaves us almost the equivalent of how long we've been alive to live a whole other life. To start again.
Yes. That's it. So this is it. I'm just burning the old me down.
Yeah.
And I'm really there's so many parts of that but I'm really excited.
Me too.
And I'm excited to be less for other people's consumption. I feel like I spent 45 years on this planet. Like, how do I look? Am I beautiful enough? Will they accept me? Am I likable enough?
Yeah.
And I really want to flip it. And I want to stop putting any energy into that stuff. And like, I'm struggling with some vanity things. I'm just like, whoa, why is my neck melting? This is fucked up. And you don't know how your neck's going to go until about 46. And you're like, I'm going to be one of those people who looks like I have a slit in my neck going horizontally and also melting downward. I'm going to have a gullet. And you're like, that's the lady. I'm going to be gullet lady.
Right.
So that's why I'm wearing a turtleneck. It's 85 degrees outside, Jess, because this is what's happening.
So much. These are the thoughts that I have in my head. Like in my 20s and even 30s, I'm like, ugh, I will never get plastic surgery. I will never do this. And now I'm like, I'm so getting plastic surgery whenever it is needed.
Oh, I know exactly the things. I have the lady.
You have the lady.
I have
already
the lady
on standby.
already on, but I'm trying to actually see how I feel about this,
Yeah.
because here's the thing: at a certain point, there's a point where you can sort of contain the aging. Let's just talk about vanity for a sec. There's a certain point you can contain the physical aging, like you can get some Botox and filler, whatever, and then there's a point where you have to make a decision. You're either fake face.
Yes.
Do I want to be fake face or do I want to be old face?
No.
And like, I'm not even. I'll be honest. I'm not sure yet. I don't know, and I really think that I shouldn't talk about it until I'm there. Just like people who are in their 30s who talk about, Botox. I would never.
Yeah, shut up.
Shut up. You have no idea what it's like to be staring like literally down the barrel of a gullet.
Yeah, or all of a sudden I'm putting on my makeup and I'm like, wow, there are lines.
Yeah, I'm like, what's the weird mid-cheek? Didn't know that would be a thing. Or even just like, I feel like I could just move my whole facial skin around and over because it's just so different. I could just push it to one other side. I don't know. It just feels very loose.
But see, this is also, I think, the untangling of all this fucked up beauty programming that we've had for so long. And what happens when you get to this intersection of life where your body has its own path in progress that it's going on. And your mind, I feel like my mind now is catching up to, I don't know, maybe like a redefined value system for myself. I mean, I think I was mentioning to you, last year I had a really tremendous spell of panic attacks, some that removed me from an airplane, and, went to treatment for them and had a lot of, I thought I was having a heart attack. Like I really hadn't experienced that kind of anxiety, depression, or panic. But I'm surprised I hadn't. I think I've been keeping it at bay for so long by doing all the other management things that I thought I needed to do to keep those feelings like way over here. Yeah. And we do that through work.
Yeah. We hide so much. So work can be a coping mechanism, just like drinking, just like smoking, just like anything. Overeating, overworking, which I think you and I both did. We were both high achieving people. Always had an eye on the prize. Always was gaming the system. Okay, what's next? What's goal oriented? And this, even more so than our generation, this is how we've programmed the generation after us to work.
Yes.
Be the best, work the hardest. You're going to lean in.
Yeah. What do you think, though, if we're Gen Xers, I feel like that's definitely a millennial curse. Yeah. But I think about Gen Z, I think about your daughter's group, or 10 to 24-year-olds, and I think they're starting to get the benefit of questioning that a little bit.
Oh, they're going to figure everything out.
Yeah,
they're going to. I mean, they're going to. It's amazing. Much more than millennials. Gen Z. Yeah. I mean, they just, the way they talk about gender and race, and the way they think about the environment and their value system. I mean, I have this window into things that is I'm aware that's a very narrow window because I'm in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. But my daughter and I talk about queerness and sexual fluidity, and we talk about everything. She's 9, and these are not shocking conversations.
No, they're not.
And I also am trying not to model overwork for her. Like, that is a big thing.
How do you do that?
Well, I mean, I told you that I'm just not working like I used to work. I'm refusing to do it. But this was So a couple of years ago, I had a real crisis. I realized I didn't like work anymore. And it wasn't that I didn't think I was good at work. And I guess I was burnt out, but it was more my approach to work was not sustainable.
Yeah.
And my approach to work was like, let me throw my entire body at this, run at it, use everything I have. It is the most important thing. I will be the one who gets it done.
Right.
Right. And it was also around a time that I was getting a lot of attention. My book had come out. I had gotten a big job, and I was getting like articles written about me, and I was doing a bunch of interviews, and everyone wanted to know, like literally I was in a magazine feature called Get That Life.
Oh my God. I remember that.
And, I was told by, people who were representing me that I needed to look a certain way and, always, have my hair blown out and have my makeup professionally done. And none of these things had ever been a part of the core of who I was. And this was really a pinnacle of success. And I knew this was a pinnacle of success. It's not like I was super rich, but in terms of like it wasn't like financial success, but I was making a lot of money. But I knew this was the top.
Yeah.
And it felt so bad. I was so sad. My marriage was in real crisis. I was not tending to my partnership in any real and important way. My daughter was also in crisis. She was really struggling in school. I had outsourced so much of my life so that I could work. I had outsourced my life. I wasn't cooking. I wasn't going to the grocery store. And I realized that I was, at this point, not only was the success did not bring me any pleasure, but I was performing.
Yeah.
And I remember I wound up losing that big job. I wound up losing the job. And I would sit in the office of that job. I knew I wasn't effective. I wasn't managing up. I wasn't playing the entire game that I'd always played, the playbook. I wasn't hitting all the same buttons because I couldn't.
Right.
I would sit in my office and I would see a big problem that was not in my job requirement to solve, but that I certainly could have solved. I could have went above and beyond. I could have stayed until 11. I could have, and I didn't. And I stopped. And I wound up getting fired because when you are a high-level person, you are and I wasn't managing up and I wasn't managing expectations because I was also just fucking terrified because what was happening to me was that I gave less of a fuck. And the feeling of not caring as much made me feel so afraid.
Yeah.
Is this going to be it for my career? Will I never make money again? And this had nothing to do with my skill set or anything.
Right. So
when I got fired, if somebody from the company like sent me a text, like, I can't believe that happened. Just, I'm so sorry. It was like a high-level executive. And I was like, don't worry. I know my value in the world. Some bullshit line like that. And I realized I don't know my value in the world or didn't, right? So this is 3 years ago now. 2 years ago. Wow. And so I've spent the last 2 years shutting down any performance, really going through some horrible shit with myself, but understanding myself.
Yeah.
And understanding how I want work to work in my life.
Yes.
And part of that is for me. And part of that is for my kid so that I can model a better way of being for her.
Right.
I don't care if she's type A. I want her to live a full, beautiful life. I want to change the definition of success for her so that it means not just a title or a paycheck or a LinkedIn page, but it means that she feels she is living fully, not when she's 47, but when she's 27.
Right.
And if that means that she doesn't have a super impressive career where somebody's get that life, who cares?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you and I, my head is just spinning right now because I think that even though we haven't talked that much in these last 2 years, but boy, God, have we been like
going through
living very, very similar paths, right? Like I think the seduction, look, LA is a whole different ball game as well.
I mean, so is New York.
So is New York, any major city in this way. But I think here, for me, you know, the seduction around success, and there's always something more to be done. I think for me, my work is my identity, and sometimes because I don't have a child and because I choose not to live for another generation or live for another person, what I've had to figure out is how the fuck to reparent myself.
Yes.
So that, just like you said, I can become the fuller part of who I am. And so much like you hit the wall going 1,000 miles an hour, for me, it was the fact that I had created a successful company on paper and out to the rest of the world, scaled 3x, hired that many people, really unhappy with the choices of people that I brought into my world and around me, really felt unsupported, really felt like I had failed in that capacity as a leader, felt incredible shame around the shortcomings that I had as a manager of my own business, because I wasn't doing this for anybody else. This was my business, and I couldn't figure out how to make myself happy in it until, very similarly to what you're sharing, I just decided that what would happen. I think the health crisis makes you do this, but I think also my therapy process and intellectually, I thought, what would happen if I just withdrew all of the effort that I'm putting in to please anybody else and redirected it into discovering what it would be to be more creatively fulfilled, more spiritually fulfilled, more like, what does that actually mean? And that's literally why we're sitting here in this space, because all that came up for me in those musings was, I have to make things again. I've been making so many things for other people. I've been launching other people's brands and other people's campaigns and gotten a lot of joy out of it to a degree. And then a huge part of who I am is a writer, creator, producer. And I wasn't doing that. And what I had to say was, if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do it because of an outcome. I'm going to do it because it's what I want to do. That has never been my drive. The drive was always about an outcome. And to actually do this, and I said to my team must have thought I was crazy. I'm like, we're going to launch this podcast and video series, and I don't care how it does. I just want to have fun while we're doing it.
Being, not becoming.
Yes.
That's really what I'm trying to do, because when it's always goal oriented and it's always, and then it's addictive, right? It's a drug, and you're not really living in every moment of it.
And by the way, when we get there, wherever we think it is.
We just said anew there.
Exactly. And you're never then ever happy. And by the way, when I do peek behind the curtain and see like the wizard behind the curtain, it fucking sucks.
No,
like,
I know.
You know, the high-powered job you have, the high-powered rooms I'm in, you get in there and you think like the little version of me, the younger version of me would have been like, oh my God, you're in this room and at this table. And but then the adult, real, like now version of me is like, I don't like these people. I don't want to be here.
I don't like these people. I don't like these people, and I don't want to make them money. I fuck it. But like, I think that so it's for me. I had to. So I had all this like because you know I'm big on the falseness of confidence. I think confidence is bullshit. So big confidence and big ambition had sort of sold me a bill of goods about myself that I didn't even know who I was anymore, right? I didn't know who I was outside of work. And like, I want to stop this conversation just to say like these are incredibly privileged positions to be in, right? Like I know that. And I know that I have had the privilege to find space in the last couple of years. Like I've been able to take clients that I really cared about and not go after work I didn't care about. But I also had to change my life too, and the way I also looked at consumption. So part of this was also, so let's just I felt bad about myself. I covered that up with some like work paint, like, oh, here's a big title paint, here's a good LinkedIn profile, oh, here's some likes on Instagram, right? So that's all the paint. Yes. Oh, wait, you did that too. Sorry. So I felt bad about myself. And then all of the things I was doing to make myself feel okay about myself, like buying shit constantly. Like I was making good money and then I was spending it because it was a coping mechanism. So one of the things I did in the last couple of years, which I never understood, was if you spend less money, you don't have to make as much money. It was like a revelation. And like when I talk about outsourcing all of my life, that is expensive. So like actually I was able to create more of a balance in my life and work less because I was doing more things myself. It's so basic. You know? And it made me feel better and like I was really living. I know where everything is in my house now.
Yep.
You know, I go to the grocery store. I cook dinner 6 nights a week.
Yeah.
It feels good.
Yeah. But that's such a, to me, that is akin to sort of bringing your life close in to you.
Yes.
Whereas I think the outsourcing, the distancing, the lack of connection also happens when we're busy all the time, right? And I know that I know what we're speaking to is within our own realm of privilege, both in how we were raised and our education, all that kind of stuff. And I also need to say, I really also want to talk about that because sometimes what I've done is I've silenced myself saying like, well, these possibly can't be real struggles for me because they're not as bad as somebody else's, or I understand my privilege and therefore I should just kind of shut up.
Right.
And I do go back and forth inside of me saying like, but I do want to talk about what it feels like if you've bought everything somebody has sold you, if you have believed in the fantasy and all the hashtag bullshit girl boss stuff, which I do think is total bullshit.
Right. Yes.
Because at the end of the day, what you said you wanted for your daughter is exactly what I want to create for myself now, which is I want to live a life, like my husband, I call it, it's our la buena vida. It's the good life, whatever that good life means to you. And the whole reason I even called the podcast, We're All Gonna Die Anyway, is it's like literally my baseline. We are all beginning our story and ending our story the same way. Nobody gets out of that. We are born and we die. Yeah. And what we do in that in-between time is what we get to create. That dash in between the beginning and the end.
Right.
And I just felt like a real gap in being able to talk about that urgency. So if that's the truth, and then I think too, you hit middle age or you lose enough people and you go, fuck. Yeah. That happens.
Well, now it's like how much longer am I going to be able to take this long walk?
Right.
How much longer am I, and then it starts to become precious, right?
Yeah.
Or you start acting out, right? You kind of have two ways to go on this one, right? You start acting up, you get the fake face, you get, you have sex with an inappropriate person. You know what I mean? You can blow up your life. And I see a lot of people do that too. But it's not facing reality.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in facing myself down in everything now. Mm. And also recognizing my privilege in ways that are meaningful to the world, not just hurtful to me, which just feels like its own kind of narcissism, right? Like I've recently, I've passed up or taken and then been like, oh, we're all white people here and I'm quitting this job because you need to have more people of color in here. Like I've been doing more of that and turning down opportunities if there isn't enough representation, if there are marginalized communities aren't there. Like I'm living my values better. And that's the best thing I can do with my privilege is not saying an experience doesn't feel meaningful to me just because of my privilege.
Right.
Do that doesn't help anybody.
No. I think also for me, it's about just reclaiming. My husband and I talk about this a lot. It's just reclaiming and then rewriting the stories that we've bought about ourselves over time. And that's to me the greatest gift of being a creator and an artist is, and we're all that. We're all that in some regard.
Right.
To be able to have enough support and skill. I think some of this does require introspection at the least, professional engagement at the most. And, there's skills that I needed to add and perspectives that I needed to get in order to frame for myself like, oh, got it. This has a name. This is a thing.
Right.
I'm not imagining it. And I now get the freedom with that education to figure out what it is that I really want.
Right.
And that for me is the work of my life, not the stuff that I do to make money.
Right.
The work of my life is really getting to know me better.
Right.
I think, I get inspired when I hear my friends who are parenting, I think in a progressive and different manner where they're valuing the wholeness of a life well lived, regardless of what that looks like.
Right.
Like that's the primary value that a young person grows up anchored around.
Right.
The choices they would make, the way they might feel about themselves differently, like that is legacy changing.
Yes. And putting a kid into the world who's solid, who's empathetic, who has good values, who has solid self-esteem,
right?
Who feels powerful out of the gate,
Right.
Imagine how your life would have been. If instead, because you didn't feel, at least for me, I didn't feel powerful. I felt like garbage. And then the swing was always, oh no, I'm great. Oh no, I'm garbage. Oh no, I'm great.
There was no in between.
There's no in between, which is where the reality is.
But that's also trauma. That is what happens for us. We look at these broad strokes.
But also we let external things define us instead of defining ourselves.
Right.
And particularly the benchmarks and how we're judging our progress in this time of Instagram. I won't even say all social media because it's really Instagram. We're all performing constantly on Instagram. No matter you're I am. Oh, look at me! I'm in a bikini eating a hamburger. Like that's one. Or like I feel so ugly today, but you've used 18 filters on your face and maybe even Facetune. And then so those things is sort of, so we're still in the body image shit with that, and like the aging. This is why we can't deal with our necks because we're not seeing the gullet in reality. Everyone's airbrushing the gullet out. But then also, we are sort of making busyness still like almost a religious experience. Yeah. Like, I'm so busy, can't get back to you, can't, like, it's a way of hiding. It's a performance and it's a way of hiding. Yeah. I did not deal with, for I would say a solid decade of my life, so many things, relationships, friendships that really need attending to, my marriage, so many things, because I was too busy. I'm so sorry, I can't make it to that thing. I'm too busy. Right. And in the process, I abandoned myself. And I abandoned connection. Yeah. And I can have compassion for myself, and I see what happened there. I get it. But I abandoned, a decade of community and connection. Yeah. And, we're talking about dying. At the end of my life, what do I want?
What do you want?
I want to have helped many people. I don't even care. What I've realized is I don't even care about my own resume or about my own titles, or I don't even care that much about money. Like, I thought I cared about money, but I didn't. I just liked, it just made me feel better about myself to get paid more. Like, I don't really care. What really matters is at the end of my life, I want to die. I want them to play some Grateful Dead. And then, maybe. And then I want people to remember me for the ways I helped their lives. I helped them be better in their careers, or, get better at their work, or I helped them make a decision, or I supported them through a crisis, or I want to, and not in a white savior way, but I want to have an impact, one-to-one, intimate, real, that I have had. I look back at my life and it's a landscape of just beautiful conversations, lifting other people up, helping people dig themselves out of holes. I want to mean something to people. And you don't get that from fucking Facetune.
No, or from overworking.
What
would a perfect death look like for you? What would be a great way to go out in this world?
I think, however it is, I mean, I'd like to be lucid. That's really important to me. And however it is, and whatever it is, I'd like to be in full acceptance. I'd like to be like, okay, that's it. It's okay.
That's incredible.
I mean, that's the dream, right? Imagine dying and fighting it. Imagine like dying like in a ton of fear and in an anxiety state.
And
people do. That's my dream, is to
be in acceptance.
To be in acceptance and be like, all right. But also, how do I get to that acceptance? Let's
start early.
Let's back up from here.
I get it.
And it starts by not spending my time in conference rooms with people I can't stand.
Damn, I'm going to put that on a t-shirt.
Seriously.
Let's just stop there. That's just it, right?
That's just it.
miss talking to you.
Me
Thank you.
Too. Thank you. I love you.
I love you too. I could have talked to Jenn for hours and hours and hours. She is that kind of person. It's just so easy to go so deep with her. And my mind is racing with all these things I wish we could talk about more. I think we got so lost in our conversation that we kind of forgot we were doing a podcast, forgot we were on camera. We both sort of whispered to each other at the end that we kind of hope our mothers don't listen to this because it's still so complicated to heal from all the stuff we've gone through in childhood. But having the safe space, I think, to have those conversations, to say some of the things that we dare to say, to me, that is the reason and the urgency for me to live the life that I'm living. And what Jenn said at the end about what her perfect death was or could be like, that kind of acceptance, I just think that's a love letter and mantra for living in full acceptance of what is and where we are right now and putting ourselves first. And our journey is that important. And so I'm going to definitely have her back in to talk about more. So let me know what lit you up in this conversation and we'll dig back in with Jenn again. You've been listening to We're All Gonna Die Anyway with me, Jess Weiner. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can also watch this podcast by checking out my YouTube channel for filmed episodes, behind the scenes footage, and all other kinds of amazing video goodies. And of course, you can always visit me at jessweiner.com. We're All Gonna Die Anyway is exec produced by me and produced by Lauren Chavez Myers. Our episodes are recorded, filmed, and edited by Jeff Franklin and Adam Lippert of B Film. And our original amazing music is by Becca and Destiny Petrell. As always, I want to send a special thank you to the love of my life, the amor de mi vida, Felipe Lopez. And if you love this podcast, please make sure to tell your friends, subscribe, and leave a review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. Most importantly, if there is something that stood out to you from today's episode, I want to hear about it. So if you want to share your own story, leave a comment, ask a question, please send me an email at podcast@jessweiner.com. I can't wait to hear from you. Bye, babies.